Ramadan.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media with myself, Salailo Makudiri. The time is 9:35, and this hour of news and views is proudly sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to Africa, to communities in Africa and beyond. And with that being said, the latest Israeli offensive in Gaza has left more than 400 people dead and hundreds more wounded. Once again, plunging the besieged territory into devastation. The Israeli government claims these renewed strikes are aimed at securing the release of hostages still held by Hamas. However, critics argue that this escalation is as much about political survival as it is about military objectives. With Benjamin Netanyahu facing mounting domestic challenges, including corruption trials and growing opposition to the war, many suggest that these attacks serve to consolidate his grip on power. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza deepens, with essential supplies dwindling and thousands displaced once more. This Ramadan is proving to be a very, very challenging and testing one for the people of Palestine. And to help us unpack the realities behind Israel's latest military assault, the stalled ceasefire negotiations, and Netanyahu's political maneuvering, we're joined by Gideon Levy, a veteran Israeli journalist and columnist at Haaretz, known for their outspoken criticism of Israel's policies in Gaza and the West Bank. Gideon, welcome to News and Views. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
I think we can kickstart the conversation with obviously the resumption of this large-scale strike on Gaza that is claimed, that the Israeli government has claimed it's necessary to pressure Hamas into releasing hostages. Given previous military operations, do you believe this strategy will work, or is it merely an excuse fueling more violence and to continue this genocide that is being perpetuated against the people of Gaza?
This question can hardly be answered seriously, because there's no doubt that this operation is just an expression of aggression. It's just another stage in the genocide in Gaza. It has nothing to do with releasing the hostages, because Israel tried for 17 months to release the hostages through military operations, and it failed. What will happen in the coming 17 months? Then it will succeed. We know by now that the only way to solve the problem of the hostages is through negotiations, and this operation has nothing to do with nothing to do. On the contrary, it does endanger the life of the remaining hostages, and above all, it risks the life of hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza.
You speak about negotiations, but many argue that Netanyahu is seemingly having no real intention of moving into the second phase of the ceasefire negotiations, which, as you mentioned, would have meant, withdrawing from Gaza, and would ultimately mean the return of the hostages. Would you say this news, aggression, and these new attacks are now more about politics than they are about military strategy? The focus right now is for him to gain favor internally in Israel.
Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, there's no other way to describe it but what you just described now, because I, from day one, knew that the second phase will not be implemented, because Netanyahu did not want to put an end to this war. As simple as this. And it was very clear throughout the negotiations that he is ready to release some hostages in order to unease a little bit the atmosphere in Israel, which is really desiring for release of the hostages. And then he will renew the war. This was crystal clear from the beginning. And
all right, we seem to have lost Gideon there for a moment, but while we try and get them back, okay, he's back. Gideon, we just lost you there for a moment, yes?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah. So I just say that Netanyahu, from the beginning, was very clear that he is not going to implement the second phase of the agreement, because he has no intention to put an end to the war and no intention to withdraw the troops from Gaza. And this was crystal clear from the beginning, and now we see the proof.
Internally, in Israel, what has been the overwhelming response to this new wave of attacks?
So Israel is divided, as you know. Those who support Netanyahu will support him automatically and blindly, whatever he does. And they are also quite eager to get back to kill Palestinians in Gaza. There is still this sense of taking revenge of the 7th of October, even though, after 48,000 killed people, mainly women and children, I would expect that this desire to take revenge would be a little bit more relaxed, but it is still existing. On the other side, there is the other camp, which its main concern are the hostages, and they are very stormy now, and there are big rallies and demonstrations yesterday and today and tomorrow, but they have very little influence because they are not the political basis of Mr. Netanyahu.
Some ministers in Netanyahu's government have openly rejected a ceasefire. How much of this new wave of attack is being driven by exactly that, by the extreme right-wing pressure within his own coalition, which it was also threatened at some point if he does continue with the ceasefire and if he does withdraw from Gaza?
I'll describe it to you in the most simple way, and unfortunately, that's the way to describe it. In 2 weeks, the annual budget must be approved in the parliament. Netanyahu has hardly a majority for this, and if he doesn't approve the budget, his government falls. The only way to increase his coalition is to get back one of those right-wing fascist parties, led by Mr. Ben-Gvir, who left the government, and say that he will be back only if the war will be renewed. So here you got it. Yesterday we renewed the war. Today Mr. Ben-Gvir is back in the coalition. The majority for the budget is guaranteed, and hundreds of Palestinians are killed again.
And when it comes to the United States and its involvement, just your assessment there. One of the first things that we've heard from the Israelis is that they did contact Washington to let them know that there's going to be this fresh wave of attacks on Gaza. How do you assess the involvement of the USA now with the return of Donald Trump into the mix?
That's a crucial question, because this operation and no other operation will take place if Mr. Trump will stop Israel. But apparently Mr. Trump has no intention to stop Israel or to stop the massacre, and therefore Israel feels free to continue to kill innocent people in Gaza because there is no one to stop it.
And just before I let you go, which chapter can we now say we are in when it comes to this genocide, when it comes to this continued suppression and killing and mass murder of the people of Palestine? Because after the end of the previous year and into the beginning of this year, there was a lot of talks about ceasefire phases. It seemed like there was a plan going forward, but the events of the past 48 hours are seemingly throwing everything out of, the mix. It just throws everyone off, and it looks like the ceasefire negotiations are not going to be what we thought and hoped them to be.
Absolutely. I mean, the ceasefire is now farther than ever. A settlement for Gaza is even beyond the horizon, a real settlement for the problem of Gaza. And we are deep, deep in trouble, all of us, Israelis and Palestinians. Obviously, the one who really paid a major price are the Palestinians of Gaza, who went through hell in the last 17 months, and now the gates of hell opened again on them much before they recovered from the former attacks. People who were uprooted already once and twice and 3 times are wandering again with the little things that they are still possessing, going from one place to the other, trying to escape on their lives. Believe me, neither you nor me would like to be now a Palestinian in Gaza. I think it's the worst place to be in today.
I think we're going to leave on that note. Gideon, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're a bit pressed for time, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. All the best.
That was Gideon Levy coming to us live from Tel Aviv. He's a Haaretz columnist and also an Israeli journalist who's been very, very vocal about, this genocide and, the works of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government who are continuing with the siege, with the mass murder of the people of Palestine. And at a time where we thought there was a glimpse of hope, we thought, the second phase of the negotiations was going to take place. But it almost even feels like there was not even a ceasefire to begin with, because at some point there was an announcement of a complete blockade of any kind of aid coming into Gaza. We've heard from people like Abu Bakr about the lived realities of the people of Palestine and of Gaza during the time where the rest of the world was starting to relax a bit. And I think we've mentioned this countless times that that announcement of the first phase of the ceasefire was not a moment to celebrate. It was, in fact, a moment to further intensify the activism, the global solidarity with the people of Palestine. And it just proves what we've been saying. Everyone was a bit almost numbed down by that announcement. There wasn't as much noise about Palestine. The activism was not happening. The solidarity was not happening as much as it was post 7th of October. And the Israeli genocidal machine strikes at that particular point when the voices are low, the activism is weak, and we find ourselves where we currently are. So yeah, really interesting conversation there with Gideon Levy. We're going to take a quick break. We'll see you after this.